I'm looking for ways to reframe what it really means to go through narcissistic abuse. As we grow up, we're getting a lot of messages from our parents how to eat right, how to take care of your hygiene, to how to behave in public. Our parents program us to serve their egos, to support their narcissistic traits or tendencies. So, what I mean by that is, what kinds of things are they telling us early on that will help us then become this person who supports them? It's like an operating system. We all have an operating system, but the programs that we're running are all unique. We can assume that our parents in this scenario would be the ones putting the programs into our operating system. It is so critical to me to go back and look at the programming that I received, compare it to then the behaviors that I see and how I've responded so that I can start to really squash those instincts, because they are their instincts. It's like you put a code into a computer, that's going to be an automatic process for it, theoretically. So our parents are creating automatic processes in our minds. If we can unpack the ways that we were programmed that are maybe hurting our relationships today, that's empowering. So the first program or message that we received when we were a kid is that we have an external locus of control. And what that means is that we rely on the outside world for validation, approval, guidance, by training us early on that our approval and our assessment of a situation doesn't matter as much as someone else's. That's how we give away that locus of control. That's what makes it external. By shutting down our strength early on, they told us we didn't have power in ourselves, that our personal power was not welcome in that situation. Everything is happening to us. We don't feel like we have a lot of control over our own destiny, our own presentation in the world. And that starts really early on with the instability created by our narcissistic parent. It's much harder for us to gather those resources internally and say, no, I control my own destiny. I can work hard and accomplish something, and it will go the way that I plan it to. A lot of people who grew up with narcissistic parents have not gotten to that point yet, but it doesn't mean that it's not possible, and that's why we're here. We're quick to discount our own opinions and feelings, and ultimately what this leads to is people pleasing. We become people pleasers because we are trained to match the tone of the other person, the external source of validation and acceptance. We're going to match their tone most of the time because that is how we were raised to be accepted. That was the only thing that was acceptable in many cases, was our adhering to what was established by someone else. We learn that people-pleasing is our path to acceptance, intimacy, love. So we're taught early on that our value, our intrinsic internal value, comes from meeting and matching someone else's needs. Think about that. Wow. So the first program that we receive is that control for our lives comes from outside of us. I really hope that this is not too overwhelming. I wanted to be able to break it down into simple terms of, hey, these are like the deep things that were sent to us early on that we have to now go find and like kick out of our brains. Program number 2, the second core program from our lovely parents. We are programmed early on for self-doubt and self-criticism. Essentially, they criticize us and doubt us to the point that we criticize and doubt ourselves. A narcissistic parent is going to be keen on not letting you get too big for your britches. They're going to make sure that you have a very humble sense of self, right? That you know your position. They might passively or actively criticize things you wear, your body, your hair, your intelligence. They can criticize anything about us, right? Once someone like a parent comes up with this critical point about us, it can be really hard to dismiss that. And those things over time build up within us. They break our sense of confidence and our sense of self so that we can make sure we never step over their ego. This doubt and criticism might come from rage-filled rants, or it might come from passive jabs at the dinner table. It can come in any form, but it's a way for them to establish dominance and say, don't think you are all that. You are not, and I'm going to point out why. They want to be in control of our self-esteem. So by questioning us and doubting our choices, they don't want us trusting ourselves. They don't want us to think independently. They don't want us to be able to assess things without them. So of course, they want to create whatever bubble they need to around us to send the message, to program it into us that we need their approval, their acceptance, their love, and that it's not going to be easy to get. As kids, we are going to internalize the criticism that our parents give us, especially over time. One example of this that can be pretty extreme is when a parent, a narcissistic parent, makes the child believe that something is broken within them. I'm not saying that mental health issues are not real in any way, shape, or form. I am saying that as a narcissistic parent, I believe they will take and grab anything they can to create self-doubt within us. And if that means getting a medical diagnosis and pushing an agenda of symptoms and creating stories, I think some extreme narcissists will do that. And so just knowing that there's a full spectrum of how far a narcissistic parent will go to create that self-doubt and self-criticism can vary widely. If we have enough self-doubt, we stay dependent on them and we will never succeed beyond them. Narcissistic parents don't want their children to do better than they did. You'll notice a pattern there where narcissistic parents will try to shove their kids down, and healthier parents will encourage their kids to not make the same mistakes that they did, that they're open about, to make better choices, to, live the life they didn't get to. They want better for their kids. Narcissists typically don't want better for their kids. Another way they do this is to use comparisons with other people. So they might compare you to other people to make you question yourself or to make you look bad relative to that person. We then go into feelings of worthlessness or just lacking value in general, lacking intrinsic value. We might feel powerless. We might feel undeserving of success ourselves. There are so many deeper messages that can come from this lack of confidence. Bottom line, they definitely want us to know that we are not special without them. Anything that makes us special is because of them. Anything that they can't take credit for, they're going to find a way to trash it. They're going to put it in the garbage. They're going to make you think it's worthless because they weren't involved. Truly, anything that it wasn't their choice or their decision, they're going to have some shit to say about it. We accept that. A lot of us know this already. But once we see it, we have a chance to change it. Once we see those messages as they come up in our minds, we can choose what to do with them. We can't stop trusting our judgment and our abilities. We got to go in like expert hackers and remove the shit out of that code. If you're finding any of this helpful, please hit the like button. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Number 3, we were programmed early on to minimize our own pain and suffering. I spoke in a prior video about this idea that a lot of people who have been through narcissistic abuse as a child or even as an adult, we tend to minimize our pain on our own and we compare it with other people's experiences because for so long the narcissistic person in our life probably minimized our feelings, and so it was trained within us that whatever we're feeling is probably not as big or important as what someone else is feeling. If we as children try to share our feelings with our narcissistic parent, we are going to walk away feeling like we don't have a right to those feelings. So just keep it in mind as you think through some of these things. I have met so many people who will tell the most horrific stories about what they've been through and then actually say, but I had a good childhood. I really can't complain. My mom did the best she could. The many ways that they'll respond to other people's pain and suffering are indications of their narcissistic traits. These are all of the ways that they program us to minimize our own pain. They might tell us that we overreact, that we are too sensitive. They can bring up stories that make our pain and suffering seem petty and irrelevant or unimportant. And it's just amazing how we minimize and compartmentalize our pain to just adapt and keep the peace. The narcissist will even accuse us of trying to get attention for our pain and suffering because they're projecting the shit out of it. They'll turn the tables and talk about the pain that they experienced in their own childhood, which oftentimes is completely over dramatized. If we actually feel our pain and our struggles, we're being over dramatic and oversensitive, and it's undeserving. Rules for thee, not for me. At the core of this third program as well is that we are responsible for our narcissistic parents' feelings. All of it's on us. It's a huge weight to bear to be responsible for your parents' up and down moods, which is completely untrue. For those of you new here, that's not your problem, not your problem. And it can create a narrative that we are the problem. If they are that up and down and it's always our fault, man, we must really be a piece of work. That's what they want us to believe, and it's not true. The fourth program that we receive from our narcissistic parents is to be fearful and to have anxiety in our day-to-day lives. Beyond just people-pleasing, some of us have a traumatic response to not being able to match the tone of someone else. Because early on, that may have meant survival for us. And I think a lot of us grew up really fearing making someone else upset or creating disapproval or frustration within someone else. We avoided conflict altogether, I believe, because conflict equals chaos in our childhood, because so little was predictable when we were kids. Conflict doesn't have to equal chaos as an adult, but because it's so deeply programmed, conflict itself can cause huge amounts of anxiety within us. Even someone else showing us apathy or just disinterest or mild dislike can trigger an intense trauma response for us, because those things as a child meant that more was to come. Something else was behind it. Another shoe was going to drop. Something was going to happen. We could not trust peace. So this anxiety and fear also then relates to our fear of not being accepted for who we are, not being understood, not being believed. We also fear and have anxiety about the unknown feelings and opinions of other people, even people we don't know. Sometimes, again, we're so deeply programmed to be looking outside of ourselves for approval, for value, that we even can base our entire moods off of the unknown opinions of others. You know what I mean, if you know what I mean. We also have fear and anxiety about being accepted or rejected by the people closest to us, because one of our parents, as a narcissist, would have done that. They would completely flip things around on us, completely abandon us, create tension, create chaos, lie about us perhaps. We have a fear of failure because our narcissistic parent probably reminded us about every failure we made. Maybe they still do. And so this fear of failure and having to then sit in someone else's judgment of that failure can become too much to bear, and we don't even try to move forward with our ideas, with our hopes, with our dreams, because if we fail, it will be so much worse with that judgment. This brings us to our fifth and final messaging / programming that we receive early on from our parents, and that is to question our own reality. So the narcissist will replace all sorts of memories with stories that they find more appropriate to their own needs. I think a narcissist will paint themselves in the best light possible day by day, changing stories to fit what they need to feel. As parents create these stories and narratives, they repeat them over and over and over time, and we as kids will eventually perhaps believe them. They send us messages that make us question reality and gaslight us by telling us who they think we are, even if it's actually not true. They can make us question our sense of self. They make us question our identity, our sense of purpose, and our value. Our perceptions are seen as here, and the narcissist perceptions are up here. Maybe they've convinced us for decades, actual decades, that they were right about something that they weren't. We also default to blaming ourselves for things, whether they were our fault or not, because we are gaslit, because we are blamed for things that are not our fault over and over and over again. We're trained early on that it's the best stance. Our default position should be to take the blame for things. These are the 5 sets of messages or types of messages that I think are programmed into us at a very early age. I wanted to talk about them. I hope it was helpful to review them and think through how those early messages may have played out in your life. I would love to hear from you if you had a different experience or if you have any to add. As long as we remember that these programs were created to serve someone else, your parent was trying to control you, your thoughts, your feelings, your behavior, your role in their life. I don't want to see myself as a victim. I want to see myself as being proactive in my own recovery. Thank you for watching. I'm Tanya. I really hope that if you enjoy this kind of content, you will drop me a comment. Let me know you're here. I would love to hear from you. And let me know what you're going through in all of this.